the situation. The over-leveraging can have an effect on the investment sales market.
Stop it. And it does have an effect on the candidates. Anybody who says it doesn't is lying.
Otherwise, it can have an effect on your ability to fall asleep or get into deep.
Updating it will have an effect on some of your programs. You might have to reinstall Dragon.
Systems and have an effect on the structure of star clusters. The smallest should.
Studies since then have shown that brain training can have an effect on your brain, but it's a lot more specific. One paper published.
Lower your sperm count, have an effect on your endocrine system. These are endocrine disruptors. Phthalates,
can have an effect on the developing brain or lead to preterm birth.
Once the baby
would have an effect on them too. So I did. I called a meeting.
It does have an effect on climate change. It does help the environment and make us better.
And microgravity might have an effect of this on this very fine mechanics of
countries, and that may have an effect on our international relations. We're going to make sure that judges.
And of course they have an effect on each other, and you can talk about them together.
Or change your diet and have an effect on the microbiome that would change your disease.
And we know that, these neurotransmitters can have an effect on mood, and we know that
environmental influences have an effect on living creatures. These so-called selection factors include predators.
Have an effect on the epidemic, but you're never going to make it.
On speech have an effect on both what we can say and what we can hear. And
Now, how does that have an effect on the way in which we look at heads of state immunity today?
If you imitate something, maybe you can have an effect on it. That's the idea.
Does this have an effect on how the parents cope with the loss of?
We don't have an effect on the neighbors, and that's what he did. He created.
Health and exercise can really, have an effect on the brain. So you do have some control. So Stephen, also with the print.
Of rain in that time, so part of the lake had filled up, and we knew that would have an effect on that first.
Things that will have an effect on Manhattan, near the ferry, near the.
Well, she asks him, where do I fit in, and is this going to have an effect on our relationship? And
it could also have an effect on the broader community. Here I have a quote from Mark.
Over the next 9 years that we have promised to cut is definitely going to have an effect on our long-term residential services. I mean,
state or municipalities' trustworthiness, you would expect, would have an effect on their borrowing costs moving forward.
That I think will have an effect on our future, our economy.
New Midtown zoning, is that going to have an effect on prices?